At 4 a.m., I had already set to travel to Uromi. I couldn't wait to board an aircraft because I needed to be there on time. Your Excellency, I got there, I met my house brothers. When I got there, it was a different ball game. They all dropped their anger. The next thing that will be saying is 4+4. So that is the level of love they have for me and I have for them. Mr. President wasn't happy at all. He didn't waste time. He made no mistake to direct the service chiefs, the Inspector General of Police, to go after the killers of these people. Your Excellency, I can assure you that justice will prevail.
As leaders, we must come together to fight this unfortunate behavior of some Nigerians. We will want to see them physically paraded so that Nigerians and the families could see them to know yes, they were apprehended. That, Your Excellency, will go a long way in making the families and their own brothers happy. We appeal to the security agencies to please help and parade them, show them, so that all these camera people will take photographs and will be disseminated so that the world will see, yes, these are the people that perpetrated that crime. Our appeal number 2, Your Excellency, I have every confidence of you.
That was the Edo State Governor, Monday Okwebolo, when he visited his counterpart in Kano State, Governor Abba Yusuf of Kano State, to pay him condolences visit and also to assure him that justice will prevail. The question is, what is the color of justice in this situation? We have this morning joining us a constitutional lawyer, Mr. Andrew Enwata, who is a legal advisor to the Edo State Governor. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Mark, thank you for having me. Good morning to our viewers at home. And Kayla, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
So perhaps I should start by asking you, because we've seen the governor, go around. He said he went to Uromi to, speak with the people there, and that when he was done, what they were telling him was that, they dropped their anger and they said 4+4. And we also saw him visit the people of Kano to express, their condolences, because we understand that the people who were traveling through Uromi, were headed to Kano. So, I mean, ostensibly, he went to greet the people there. And he's also offered to pay compensation. So the question is, what is the color of justice, given the fact that the governor of Kano State is also asking that the people who have been picked up by the police or the people who are picked up by security agencies be paraded? He thinks that would give some measure of, respite to the people who are wondering if the security agencies are doing anything about it at all.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I think I'll start by first condoling with the families of these victims. And much as we have these itinerant victims, we also have people who were murdered in their farms. Just recently, I mean, about that same period, we had situations in Ovia Southwest where certain persons were killed on the 21st of February. We had many of those incidences in Uromi. Even the king of one community, Uzia, also complains that when people go to their farms, they are killed. So for all these victims, we condole with their families. But when you talk of justice, I think justice must be done. I don't believe in jungle justice. If those persons that killed those 16 travelers, even when you apprehend a criminal, the right thing is to hand them over to the police. And unfortunately, the particular set of individuals who call themselves members of a vigilante, these were actually renegades who, of course, after the ban placed on them before they do elections, regrouped. So it now calls to question our structure in terms of our security architecture. why is it that we don't regulate these vigilante people? Why is it that we allow illegal groups to operate? So I think it's a serious cause for concern, and for me, it has provided a learning curve for both the federal and state government. For us to now, if we say we want to do community policing, should we not regulate these persons? Who are they answerable to? So there are too many questions begging for answers. But I must also commend the Edo State governor, because he went into action immediately. He said he got the news 4 a.m., went to Uromi, the scene of that incident, calmed, freed nerves, traveled to Kano, saw the government of Kano, the governor particularly, went to see the families of these persons who were killed, and the talk of compensation, because that's the only way you can reduce freed nerves. That's the only way you can avoid the reprisal, because those steps taken by the Edo State government shows that this is not something, it's an unfortunate incident that has befallen us, but we have to deal with it in a manner that we don't have reprisal attacks. And if you notice, so far no reprisal attacks. But I don't think I agree with the governor of Kano that you should parade these persons, right? It's for justice to be done, because Section 36, sub 5 of our Constitution says anybody accused of a criminal offense is presumed innocent. Because the moment you parade somebody, the impression is that this man is a murderer. Much as the victims were not given the opportunity, because these were persons that you cannot say if they were killer headsmen, the mere fact that you saw guns on them. So it calls to question our security architecture and the need to regulate the activities of vigilante groups.
But, it's a question of trust, because when, the governor says they should be paraded, some people will say it also borders on the trust that even government officials recognize that people do not have in government these days. It is because of a lack of trust that people take laws into their own hands. So, for instance, in Uromi, the people whom have also gone through a lot in the hands of, herdsmen and, people who clearly, it's not clear if they're herdsmen, because we're wondering if they're herdsmen, shouldn't they be looking after their cattle? Why are they using their own activities to disturb other people? But they've also gone through quite a bit in the hands of these people. And then as a result of that, there was a profiling of people who were itinerant and just going through their community. So it's a lack of trust on almost every corner. Do you think that this will bring back the embodiment of trust to say, indeed, government is on this one? There's no attempt here to try and sweep this under the carpet.
And I think it goes to the issue of lack of collaboration. I mean, an incident of that kind happened. The police was not involved. In the entire stretch, we don't have any military formation. We have too many security agencies. But I think it's because they operate in silos. And remember that the driver of that particular truck that was involved in the incident was apprehended, was taken to the police. So how come not even a security personnel, conventional security personnel, was on ground? So that was what created the fertile ground for that mob justice. And if you ask me, I think there's need for us to now have what I'll call a security confab, to ask, how do we now want to operate policing at the grassroots level? How do we now operate community policing, whether we call it vigilante? Because remember, hunters see themselves too as vigilante. So the question is, this itinerant hunters, how come they didn't find games in the north? They said they were coming from Port Harcourt, going to Kano. So I think there are issues that we need to look at. Do we regulate hunters that move with firearms? It may not be a good time for us to discuss these issues because we are mourning the lives of those people that are lost. But how do we now stem the tide? Because there's bound to be a recurrence. Day in, day out, we find scores of persons killed in their farmlands. Even in Uromi, for a very long time, they've not been able to attend to their, because most of these communities are agrarian.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the points that you just raised now. One of them is the idea of people traveling with firearms, regardless of their profession, hunters or, traveling with firearms, and the impact that has, especially, like, we've seen that happen now. Many people have argued that if they were not carrying firearms on them, this vigilante action wouldn't have happened. So I want to be able to speak to that situation of traveling with firearms. Also, the regulation of these vigilante groups, because you mentioned it earlier. What's the situation? You said this particular vigilante group was banned or shelved or something, and then they came back. So what's the story around the regulation of this particular vigilante group at this moment? Okay,
thank you. I think I will just do something like a historical, background to what's, we now call the Edo Security Network. Under the Obaseki regime, he had what he called, I think his own was what was known as EWSN, the Edo Security Network. And close to the election, they were deeply involved in the politics of the state. Remember, there was this attack the governor's convoy where his orderly was killed. And, preliminary investigation showed that some of these persons who were members of that vigilante were responsible for it. That was what now led the IG then to ban that body. And of course, when this new government came, there was need to, because we had court wars, and even what gave rise to this new Edo Security Corps was the need not to just leave this thing in the hands of the police alone. And apart from the fact that the police is understaffed, you cannot take away the issue of community policing. But talking about regulation, the idea is that how do you now identify who is a vigilante? Because anybody can just go and get uniforms. Who regulate their activities. And that is why I think there's need for us to have a security confab whereby we now ask ourselves, because we talk of the civil defense. Remember, the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps started like this. They were private individuals.
A security confab in Edo State.
I mean, a national one, because it's a national problem. In Plateau recently, you heard of the killing. So it's not just an Edo State thing. It's just that because of the extrajudicial nature of those persons who were killed, there's need to now ask ourselves, can we allow these people to continue the way they have been operating?
What's the rule? What's the rule legally when it comes to traveling with firearms? Because many people may not understand
It is not acceptable. If you are not a security agent, you are not supposed to travel with a firearm. What is not the guarantee that you are not a criminal? Because first and foremost, it is only the police, the DSS, and certain security agencies, by virtue of the law enabling them to operate, that gives them that power to hold firearms. And if you ask them, some of these security bodies that operate as community police, as vigilante, and name them, they are not supposed to even use firearms, if you ask me, because there's this liability to abuse, as we have seen. Liability in the sense that, are they properly trained? Because for you to be a policeman, you must go through a series of training. For you to be a member of the DSS or an official of, say, the customs, you must go through certain training. These people are not trained to, carry firearms. So I think there's need for us to now reorganize our security architecture, particularly at the level of community policing. And again, to add that, you ask yourself this simple question: how do we now identify these persons if we don't have laws regulating them? It is not just for state governments to have their laws. I'll give you an example. Private security agencies in Nigeria are regulated by the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, which is now the body that regulates these vigilante groups. So apart from the associations they claim to belong to.
Another question people have asked is, how come there was no police presence in that entire... Is that a part of Edo State that the police are not present in?
It's painful because I think it's also that gap, which of course resulted in the sack, or rather in the removal of the commissioner of police. Because the question was, this thing dragged for over an hour. How come the police did not go to the locus criminis, the scene of the crime? These persons bore her arms. They traveled all the way from Port Harcourt. It only took the intervention of these vigilante people, even if we say they are a ragtag group, right? But how come these people who were carrying arms were not spotted throughout that corridor? I mean, and that trust deficit flows from what this scenario paints. People moving with fire. Imagine if it was AK-47 they were carrying. And I'm sorry to say, and I'll say this on national TV, our policemen are more interested in the 200 or 500 naira they collect. We're all witnesses to it. So I think we need to reorganize our police force if we must make progress in this fight against crime and criminality.
What
a day to say. Because today is National Police Day.
Exactly. It's National Police Day, so it's a very important day for this conversation.
But very soon we certainly will be going to the Eagle Square where that celebration is taking place. But while they celebrate, these are some of the issues. It is what it is. I mean, right now we're talking about lives that have been lost. What I want to know is this some attempt at pushback? Because let's not forget that even in the north of Nigeria, in the south of Nigeria, where people think, oh, these are herdsmen that are committing these atrocities. There's a way that people say, oh, they look. So when you see people who look like those people, you profile them and you say this is what they look like, and you're able to. And then when you now see guns on them, it even makes it makes your suspicion even stronger. But in the north of Nigeria, we also know that the northerners have also been going through this particular issue. Only recently, I think it was just last week, we saw the NSA hand over a former general in the Nigerian army, or let's say a retired general in the Nigerian army, someone who had headed an organization no less than the NYSC, who was released alongside a number of other people after being kidnapped for over 50 days in the north of Nigeria. So we see that these problems are all over the country, regardless of where it is that people are. This national confab which you propose, what do you think is going to be dealing with?
I think it borders on synergy. There's this lack of it. Do we think that the issue of security is just a federal government affair or a state government affair? The fact that we don't even involve the local government in it is what worries or bothers me, because if we talk of the whole idea of community policing, a country like Ghana, there's what they call the CPU, the community policing unit there. They work closely with the regional or local government. So how come, just like at the federal level, you know, there's a security body at the federal level, at the state level, you have the State Security Council where the governor as chief security officer sits as chairman. Even the local government, they also have their security committee. I think that national confab will address the issue of not just funding, but how do we now regulate this vigilante group? How do they work with the police? Is their function going to be purely intelligence gathering, or they arrest and hand over these persons to the police? It is that lack of regulation that created this scenario we found in Edo. Because these individuals that, as vigilante, apprehended these people, it was the alarm they raised, right, that resulted in that attack, that mob attack. Because at that point, you had some group of individuals who felt bereaved. They have family members that were killed. So it was that anger. But that does not justify jungle justice. It does not justify mob justice. It does not justify resort to self-help. Because we can only do that when we don't have a civilized society. Do
you think that, it should also focus on understanding? Because we saw situations like this when Boko Haram first of all started, where in the south of Nigeria, people didn't quite understand, and it was seen that Islam as a religion, and this was not only in Nigeria, this was all across the world. There had to be, where people had to say, look, the religion is not about terrorism, it's about peace. Do you think that awakening needs to, come up again, to let Nigerians, especially in the south of the country, know that Northerners are not their enemies, and the Northerners to understand also that Southerners are not their enemies?
True. I think that mutual distrust comes from that age-old conundrum between this farmer-herder thing. In the north, because they cannot get enough sufficient forage to take care of their cattle or their herds, they move south, and the moment you now tell them they cannot go here, they cannot go here, they go into people's farms, because we saw videos of people's cassava being harvested, their yams, and they used to feed their animals. I think the problem of ranching is still here now, because most states have what you call an anti-grazing legislation. Like in Edo, we do have that legislation. So these people, because they cannot come out openly, they now resort to killing people that prevent them from harvesting their crops. So the security confab I propose will resolve some of these issues, right? Namely, because I know they now call it Ministry of something livestock now in Nigeria. Yeah. So what role is that ministry playing? How do they now collaborate with security agencies to see how we can, because these headers, we need to educate them. And because majority of them come from a part of the country, Nigeria, that's the northern part, we tend to give that stereotype, we tend to label them. And when we say killer headsmen, not all of them are killer headsmen. You just have some criminal elements behind it. And the question is, are they all Nigerians?
So what is the Edo State government doing in that regard? Given the fact that this has now happened and people still live with this, I know that even back at home, the Edo State governor is facing some criticism. There are those who say, oh, this happened, you've not even comforted the people enough, you run all the way to Kano. When these things were happening, when the initial killings around Uromi were happening, I mean, talking about people whose farms, people could not go to their farms, people who lost lives, you didn't visit them. It is when this kind of incident happened that you now decided to visit. So there have been criticisms like that, against the new governor. Do you want to tell us what it is that the Edo State governor is now doing, or the government as it is now doing to enlighten people and let them know that these are the challenges and these are some of the solutions that they are proposing?
Yeah, thank you. What we have is a clear and present danger. And security issues of this kind are insidious in nature. They don't just happen overnight. And when this governor came out campaigning, top on his agenda was this problem of security, of insecurity, addressing security issues. And, this one governor in his first 100 days has committed so much of state resources in addressing this problem. He has provided, over 100 motorbikes, because most of these bush areas, you need motorbikes to access these places. The fact that he immediately reorganized the security, Edo State Security Corps, a bill was sent, and eventually, have a proper superstructure. But unfortunately, as I said, you still have renegades, from the BAM group. And even more than that, when incidents like this happen, the governor goes to the site immediately. There was one incident, as I mentioned, on the 21st of February, via Southwest, where, scores of farmers were killed, even some buildings were burnt down and all of that. The governor was on ground. So the security issue in our state is one that has never happened the way it has happened. So the governor is putting all into it, is giving it his best shot. And in the days ahead, I hear that certain steps will be taken. Security issues are not what you put out on national TV because of the very sensitive nature. But again, I don't think I agree with those that felt the governor would not have. Yes, the people who were victims, of these attacks, the governor had visited them. Even issues of compensation were on the table when this other one came up. So this one looks like a reprisal, but the governor does not see it as such. He feels that the people who have been orphaned, who have been widowed, you must talk to them to avoid a reprisal. If not for what the governor did, imagine what would have happened in the north. I mean, we've seen it in the past.
You said you don't support the request by the Kano State governor to parade them.
No, I'm saying that the law does not allow it. Yes, it's not my personal opinion.
So I was
going
to ask, because you talked about the fact, because I understand sometimes you have to make these sorts of, you have to go and see them because of reprisal killings and things like that, especially in the north. You wouldn't want that to happen. Some people have suggested that maybe for this particular matter, they should maybe shelve that law and do this parade that the governor has asked for, just so to calm the frayed nerves in Kano. Is that something that the governor should think about?
I think if you notice,
maybe with a conversation with the IG.
Actions were immediately taken. First, the governor, after his preliminary investigation, immediately disbanded some of those illegal vigilante group, and even suspended the head of the one that was legally recognized, that you could not even identify these persons. It was not a sign of leadership. And even more than that, persons have been arrested, 14 of them. Though this argument of, oh, these persons arrested, what is a guarantee that we don't have some innocent ones amongst them? Because, it is one of those saying in law that it's better to free 99 persons than to send one innocent person to jail. So, and of course, I've mentioned this earlier, Section 36, sub 5 of our Constitution says, any person, accused of a criminal offense is presumed innocent until his guilt is established. Because if you parade me, for instance, Barrister Wanta, the impression out there is that I'm a murderer. But the fact that the investigation is made transparent, if these persons have been apprehended, you arraign them, or do proper investigation, then you arraign them. So if the people see that these persons have been arraigned, I mean, that's a step towards justice. But one thing I can assure you is that the Edo State government will ensure that the killers of these persons will be brought to justice.
Who is prosecuting them? Is it the Edo State government or the federal government?
I think it is the duty of the police to investigate, but because these offenses took place in Edo State, of course, it will be the Edo State courts that will try them.
So this is
tried in the Edo State
court. This is within the jurisdiction of the Edo State government.
Exactly.
So the 14 persons who were arrested by the Nigeria police.
By the special team, because I know it's a DIG that is responsible, the first CID, they are the ones responsible for this investigation, not the Edo State Police Command.
Okay, so were they brought to Abuja?
Of course, they were brought to Abuja for investigation, because that's where they had the headquarters of the first CID. Okay. I think somewhere around Garki in Abuja. Okay,
so that matter, they are being investigated in Abuja, but then they will be taken back to Edo State for the prosecution. Is that correct?
For me, I don't think where an investigation happens, I mean, and again, it's to also insulate the process so that they don't think people are trying to, and we don't want to go into that because the IG that gave its directives wants justice to be done. And I think it's a proper investigation. I believe they are doing what they are doing.
I'm just trying to understand the process. That's what I'm trying to understand. I want to know, because people are making demands. You heard no less than the governor, saying that the suspects be paraded. This is a request that he's made. I don't know whether he's making it to the Edo State. He said it when the Edo State governor was there. I don't know whether it is within the powers of the Edo State governor to make that happen. But you have said this is not the law. I mean, and even the police, I think just before this incident happened, the police actually put out a directive prohibiting police officers or police yes, they banned the parade of suspects.
Exactly.
So we're not sure whether this was going to be an exception to the rule. I'm just trying to understand the process now, given the involvement of the police at the national level, and also knowing that usually murder cases are prosecuted by the state governments in the jurisdiction where they have happened. So I'm just trying to understand what is going to happen in this particular instance.
You have a multi-layer. The criminal justice system is not just a one-stop thing. You have the police, the body responsible for arrest, investigation, and even prosecution, right? But for the court that will be involved in this particular trial, it will be depending on the nature, because we are talking of murder. So it will go to the Edo State High Court, and we have a criminal division that will handle. But I assure Nigerians that justice will be done, and it will be seen to be done, ultimately.
Okay, we certainly will keep tabs with you on that particular issue. We will be looking to see, just how justice is done, because as the governor did say, he said, that's the governor of Edo State, he says justice will prevail. And I think a lot of Nigerians will be looking forward to seeing that. Well, we have to thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. Mr. Andrew Enwata is a constitutional lawyer and also the legal advisor to the governor of Edo State. Thank you once more.
Thanks for having me.